Welcome to WVTC TV Network, capturing family moments in real time, bringing families closer together from the comforts of home. We are unleashing something different to the world. Start your subscription today for the low price of $4.99 per month or $55 annually. Go to www.wvtctvnetwork.com to sign up today. WVTC TV Network is streaming live on 8 different platforms. You can easily download the WVTC TV Network app on the Apple Store, Play Store, Roku, Fire TV, and more. Here at WVTC TV, we have access to movies that everyone can enjoy, including independent films, Sons of a Preacher and a Good Thing, Treasures of Life, the epic drama, The Passion of the Christ, and the box office hit Madagascar Escape to Africa. Remember, go to www.wvtctvnetwork.com and sign up today.
The following program contains views that are not those of WVTC, iNetworks Communications, their subsidiaries, affiliates, or financial supporters.
I'ma do it better, better, better. I'ma do it better, better, better.
Hi, welcome to Healing Works with Anna. I'm Anna. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and we are here to talk all things healing, growing, and building community together.
And I'm your co-host, Delaney. Happy to be here.
Yes, and I know today we're talking about what the first session is like for therapy. And so I know that all of the steps that it takes to get to therapy take a lot of courage. And then you have that very first session, which can feel nerve-wracking, especially if you don't know what to expect. So we will be diving in a little bit deeper today to talk about what to expect from a first session.
Yes, for a lot of people, the first therapy session can feel kind of like daunting and intimidating, but it's really not that big of a deal. I mean, it can be, but we're definitely just gonna like dive in and answer some questions and just talk it through. I do have a couple questions. One of the questions that I have is, will the therapist judge me? Like if I was going into a session as a therapist, are you like judging your clients?
That is a very good question, and probably a question that a lot of people have. And the answer is no, not if you're going to see a good therapist. Our role as therapists are not to judge. We see all kinds of people with all kinds of experiences walk through our door. And part of our role as a therapist is to be non-judgmental ourselves and to create a non-judgmental space, because I think, most of the spaces that we're in, we face a lot of judgment. And so, like the last thing that we want to do is judge someone who has taken the courageous step to come in and share some of the most vulnerable parts of yourself.
Absolutely. Like, should I feel pressure to like share like intensely during my first session? Like, what if I don't know what to say? Do I just kind of like spill, or how does that work?
No, it's a good question. I would say go at your own pace, because I know that for me and for us at Healing Works, we value giving our clients a quality experience. And so that means we want to go at your pace. And if you come in and you're like, okay, this is what's going on, and I don't know what else to say. Our therapists are skilled in asking follow-up questions and really guiding, and sort of
Yeah,
getting to know you. Yeah.
absolutely. What are some things that, like, going into a first session that I should be mindful of in terms of, like, what things can I talk about, like, right off the bat?
So I would say it's really good to be aware of what your hopes and goals are for therapy. That is one
Sure.
thing that is helpful. So if you go in and one at least one or two of the things that you're hoping to work through in the
Mhm.
therapy process, and then also have you know an idea of what your hopes and goals are when working through those things. I would say that would basically be it because again, good therapists, which is why I'm like, our our therapists are trained to continue the conversation on. And so typically
Mhm.
what a first session looks like with me is that I'll ask, what your hopes and goals are for therapy. So that is
Mhm.
my first question. And then I'll ask,
Yeah.
what is it that's bringing you in? And then from there, I tend to have plenty of follow-up questions to guide the
Really?
discussion and to deepen the discussion.
Mhm. I don't know if any of you out there are like me, but I'm a very self-aware person. So I go in, like, at least in my experience of going in for first sessions with any therapist, I come in with a lot of questions and, like, a lot of just, "Here's my story, here's my background." How do you typically handle clients like that come in and is, like, very specific about their goals and is very clear about everything that they wanna work through in therapy?
I think that's great. I think, that creates a great foundation. So I would say a client like that, I honestly would want to take the time just to listen.
Mhm.
To listen, and then throughout that time, I might make notes like, okay, so I hear that you're wanting to work on these things. And then you mentioned this thing over here that happened too. Is that something that you would also like to,
Mhm.
talk through in this space? And so, but I think coming in, already knowing what you're hoping to get out of it is a great place to be. And you also don't have to be in that place, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think with a lot of therapy, practices, especially ours, we do, like, at least a first, like, session, like, 20 minutes of just getting to know the therapist and allowing the therapist to get to know somebody. Can you break down, like, what that kind of looks like? Like, it from top to bottom, what does that first session typically look like for somebody?
Yeah, so I would say first you come in and likely, I'll probably go over just some things in therapy that, if we didn't, and we can talk about this too, but at Healing Works, we
Mhm.
offer a free 20-minute consultation first. So
Yeah.
by the time we get to a first session, based on the consultation, I already have an idea of what you're coming in for. So
Mhm.
then at that point, I might share a bit more about confidentiality, which is that everything that we talk about in our sessions is kept between us.
Mhm.
And so, um, and with the only exceptions being, if you wanted to, if you're having thoughts of hurting yourself or others, and so
Yeah.
outside of that, everything that we talk about is confidential. So I'm not talking
Mhm.
about to anybody else. So I like to make sure that's known in a first session.
Yeah,
Um,
that's good.
yeah. Yeah, I
Mhm.
think if it's a first couple session, then I would say the added piece is a no secrets policy. So sometimes
Mhm.
with couples, I might split up one or both people. And so, um, yeah, so in that, basically, everything that we talk about individually, we'll talk about all together. So I like
Amazing.
to talk through those technicalities first and then go
Mhm.
into what's bringing you in and what your hopes and goals are for therapy. And honestly, that takes up a lot of the time, but I think again, I'll break it down in terms of individual therapy versus couples. If I'm working with an individual, more often than not, I'll ask you to tell me your life story, which is a big question, but
Mhm.
in about 30 minutes, tell me your life story, because what it does is it paints a picture for me. And then I can
Yeah.
go back in and ask specific questions, about different things that pertain to the goals that you have in mind. Um, and for couples, I would say that that first session would be looking at your relationship history. So how you first met,
Sure.
what first attracted you to each other, and then how like just the journey from that first meeting to where we are today.
Mhm. That's good. What are some myths that you feel like come up a lot when it comes to like a first session that
Hmm.
you want to break down? Or should I come up with a couple?
Yeah, what are some myths that
Oh, what are some?
our audience? Yeah.
I know for me, like, I can feel like I have to share everything right away. Like, I'm very much like, if I could make a PowerPoint of my whole life and bring it into my first session, I would. But should someone feel pressure to feel like they have to divulge like everything about their life or just specifically what they're there for?
I would say, honestly, specifically what you're there for. Of course, you can come in, and if you want to come in and just start from the beginning and divulge and see, where it goes,
Yeah.
that's totally fine. And if you're like, I'm still trying to figure out if I can trust you, which is very, um,
Yeah.
very much so okay, then I think starting small, because it's a process. Even if you do come in and you share everything, it's still going to be a process. It's sort of like,
Yeah.
what is it that they say, like peeling the onion. There's so
Mhm.
many layers that even if you come and tell me everything all at once, there's still going to be so many layers. So
Yeah.
there's really no right or wrong, truly.
Mhm. I think another myth is that therapy, and we kind of talked about this in the first episode, that therapy is only for my problems.
Mm.
Like, what are some other reasons, if you want to recap that a little bit, like, what are some other reasons that people may come in for therapy? Um, and then how do you go about that from the first session?
Yeah, I would say, again, I'll break it down, since we work both with individuals and couples. I'll break it down
Mhm.
for each. So if you're coming into
Sure.
therapy for individual counseling, then there's so many things, and it doesn't just have to be that there's a problem, but maybe you might want to level up and so to speak, in terms of your career, and maybe you're experiencing
Mhm.
some mental blocks or some emotional
Sure.
blocks. That's something that we can help you through in therapy. Or
Yeah.
maybe you're like, overall, like, life is feeling good, but I recognize that there are some things in me that maybe are unhealed, and so I'd like to work through those. Or, for some, therapy is just a space to process. Like, for folks who are like busy professionals and maybe don't have that time to slow down throughout the week,
Yeah.
then therapy offers that space to slow down, and work through all of the feelings that you've had through the week in a way that keeps you mentally and emotionally healthy. And then I would
Yeah.
say for couples, I think similarly, it's not just when things are at the brink and you're like, okay, this is the last effort. Honestly, that's while you can come into therapy at that time, the best time to come into therapy is when you're like, we overall we're doing well, but we have some communication issues that we want to work out. And
Yeah.
so, coming in to do that and learn those skills then can keep you from getting to that point when you're at the brink. Of course, if you're at that point when you're at the brink, still come in and we can help
Yeah.
you get back to where you were before. So I'd say those things, as well as for couples who are, wanting to take that next step and get engaged or get married. Therapy is a great space, to do
Yeah.
that. So, yeah.
Incredible. I know for me, like, I've been to therapy for a few different reasons throughout my life. Um, and sometimes it's around like major problems, like, whatever, like emotional issues, whatever. But sometimes it's just simply like I just want to discover more about myself and like
Mhm.
level up in specific areas. And so that's exactly to your point earlier about like talking to the therapist about your goals. But say that like you realize that that therapist isn't a good fit. Like how are you vetting out if the therapist is a good fit for you during like your first session? Like what are some
So
tips there?
yeah, no, that's a good question. I think, and I like to give this advice with many things in life, but I
Mhm.
think that it applies here, which is really thinking about how you feel before, during, and after your therapy session with this therapist.
Right.
So, like if before meeting with your therapist you feel nervous and maybe even some anxiety, that's normal. But then if
Yeah.
during the session you feel like, okay, I feel like this is a space where I know I'm not being judged. I feel like I really trust this person, and
Mhm.
I feel emotionally safe to share and to open up. Maybe I'm even opening up more than I thought I would, and I'm surprising myself. Those
Yeah.
are things that are indicators that that might be a safe place. And then and then after, hopefully the feeling might be, there may be some heaviness depending on what you're coming in for. So sometimes it
Sure.
can feel heavy after, but typically there's some sense of relief or, okay, even though that was hard, I'm glad I did it. If it's not that, if before you feel nervous or maybe even excited, during you feel uncomfortable, like, I
Mm.
don't want to actually reveal these parts of myself. And then
Mhm.
after, you feel, maybe heaviness and no relief, or just kind of even more discomfort of like, I didn't really feel seen or heard in that space,
Yeah. Yeah.
then that would be an indicator that it's time to look at other options.
Yeah. I've experienced some of those, not so
Yeah.
great initial sessions, but I think it's just a part of the journey of getting closer to whoever you are meant to work with.
Yeah.
Um, and first sessions, especially if they're free, like they're opportunities just kind of like they're kind of like first dates, like blind
Mhm.
dates. Like you're kind of evaluating like how you feel and what you want to do moving forward. And if it's not a good fit, then it's not worth giving up, like it's just a matter of like, okay, like keep going until you find someone that does work with you and for you.
Definitely.
Another myth, oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying definitely.
Uh, oh, amazing. Another myth that comes up a lot is the therapist has all the right answers right away. Is that true?
No, no. Please don't expect me to have all the right answers.
Mhm.
I don't even really believe that there is such thing as a quote unquote right answer, because I think that
Yeah.
there are many. It all depends. There are many paths to get to where you're wanting to go, and so a
Mhm.
good therapist is going to help you find which path is right for you and help you actually discover that you've had the answers all along. You just need
Yeah.
someone to help walk with you and help you uncover what some of those answers are.
Yeah.
Because what I don't want to do is be we have plenty of people telling us what to do every day. I'm not trying to be one of those people. So instead, I want to,
Right.
you know, uh, we really want to empower our clients to tap in and find the answers within them. And we are, guides to help you along the way.
Yeah, I've noticed that like therapy is such a collaborative process.
Yeah,
Like me and my current therapist right now, like it's just so fun to work with her. Like she's
yeah,
almost like as she's learning me, we're learning together alongside each other of like how to, how I can best navigate a lot of what's happening in my life. And through that, I feel like it's fostered such like closeness and like a
Mm,
safety where I can share more. Because I've also noticed that um, there's like this tendency to want to compartmentalize a lot of stuff
mm,
and
mhm,
as if things don't kind of work together in your day-to-day life. Like I might only talk about, like relationship problems and feel like my self-esteem has nothing to do with it, but all of it kind of comes together. And so I think that's something that I look for is just that willingness to collaborate with me, that I don't put a lot of pressure on my therapist to have all the right answers, and they don't put a lot of pressure on me to like share everything, but we kind of work hand in hand of like, I feel safe with you, so I'm going to share more, and maybe that might shift things or like, and we're going to work together.
definitely. Definitely. No,
Yeah.
I think that's special too, because that closeness is special, It's
Yeah.
like, where else can you go where you have a space that's dedicated just for you? You get to come
Mhm.
in, and the focus is on, like you said, collaborating with you to get you to where you want to go.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really special, and it shows a lot of like there's some courage and sometimes some perseverance that's necessary when finding the
Yeah.
right fit. But when you find the
Yeah.
right fit, it's worth it. It's worth it for sure.
Absolutely. How does one prepare for their first session? Like they haven't even met the therapist yet. What are some things that they can think about or, write down to prepare themselves to go into their first session?
Hmm. I think, and this is after already selecting a therapist.
Yeah, like say that I went on a website, I'm like, I want to work with so and so. And before I even sit down with them, what are some things that, I should do to kind of prepare me for that session?
Yeah, I would think about, because I know, like, so we have our therapist bios up, and typically when you find a therapist, there's something in the bio that might speak to you. So I would
Sure.
say definitely, noting that, like, what was it in the bio that spoke to you? Because I think being able to
Mm-hmm.
share that can give insight even to you into what you're looking to gain. And then I would take some time to journal out 3 hopes and goals for the therapy process,
Hmm.
as well as journal out at least one thing that is your sort of motivator for seeking therapy, in terms
Sure.
of what's bringing you in. So I would do that, and then I would also sort of prepare by journaling, you know, all of the feelings that you are having before, and so that you can pay attention to what we
Yeah.
talked about before, that before, during, and after. But I really think doing that, and then just, whatever, like taking some deep breaths and just telling yourself it's okay to be nervous, and yeah, sort of having compassion on yourself going
Yeah.
in. But also, yeah, I think another preparation piece is, I don't know how to say it other than being prepared to trust your gut, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So, um, yeah, really being prepared to listen to yourself from the very beginning of the journey of whether or not it feels like a good fit. Because if it is not a good fit, this is not a relationship for you to just power through and say, it's okay. Absolutely not.
Hmm.
If it does not feel like a good fit, then you can
Yeah.
try something else. But if it does feel like a good fit, that's when the powering through comes into play, in terms of, um, there's going discomfort is inevitable in this
Yeah.
process, and so that's why the most important piece is
It's
that
true.
how you feel with
Yeah.
the therapist. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think an encouragement from me, especially if you're someone that's like self-aware, like I am, come with questions. I know that a lot of therapists have their bios on the website, But you can even just inquire more. Like, what does this look like? So what is somatic, therapy? How would that work for me? Or you can just like refer to that of like you mentioned that you work with people with ADHD. What does that look like? Yeah, bringing questions. You could even be specific about even for you of like this is something that I go through. Like I'm working through a lot with my family of origin and kind of share a little bit. And then like how would you go about working with something like this? Just so I can know and like have in the back of my mind before I decide to like go
Yeah,
further with you if that works for me or not.
absolutely. I think bringing questions is great. Yeah.
Hmm. Yes. And to give yourself grace, like you said, like therapy is not always an easy process depending on what you're going in there for. And like, it's a place like to kind of test the waters. Like essentially you're the one driving the boat. Like you're going in and you're kind of setting the tone and allowing the therapist to kind of walk with you with your journey. I
Yeah.
think another misconception is that you go in, it's like, here's all my problems. And it's like, okay, like, as I could imagine as a therapist, it's like, okay, like I can come up with a plan, but I'm really basing it off of you because this is you and your healing journey. You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of encouraging for me to know, like, I'm actually the one kind of
Mhm.
setting the tone and driving this boat, um, rather than feeling like I just shared all my problems and this person that I barely know could take this in a direction that may or may not work for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, and that brings up a good thing too, because I think one, know that therapy is meant to empower you. So that's what we
Right.
do, and especially like, yeah, our goal is to empower you.
Yeah.
And so I think having those expectations, managing expectations that, if you come in and say, fix this,
Yeah.
I'm going to say, oh, well, what are the things that led us here? And how is
Mhm.
that, I'm not going to, be able to just say, okay, here you go. And so there
Right.
is this piece, and that speaks to the collaborative piece too of therapy, is that the folks who I find get the most benefit out of therapy are the people who do the work outside of session. And so what that looks like depends,
Right.
and so like if you're going for individual therapy and, maybe say, like you said, like the example you gave of working through family of origin, things I might give you some journaling prompts to
Mhm.
explore that further outside of session so that we can dive even deeper in our next session. And so, if I give you those journaling prompts and you're like, I didn't get to it, that's fine. But just know that the progress that you're wanting to see is really dependent on you. And I
Yeah.
think similar for the couples that we work with, like, we can give some I like to say like homework or challenges, whichever word you prefer
Mhm.
is typically how I
Yeah.
couch it. And so, outside of session, if you're practicing new ways of communicating with your,
Mhm.
with your significant other, then,
Mhm.
it's going to be uncomfortable because it's likely going to be different from what you're used to. But if that's
Sure.
not happening outside of session, then, our time, we
Mhm.
only have an hour, and so, in order to
Yeah.
really reinforce it and get
And I
to
feel like an hour is never enough.
yeah.
It's I'm a yapper, so, like, I'm like, there's not enough time, but for sure, absolutely. I think to close out, I think starting therapy is, like, a brave and powerful step.
Mhm,
Like, it's all about being open to the process because healing and growth is not a linear process. You may, go through all kinds of different cycles through your process of therapy, but it's not something that you should feel like, oh, that's like a lot. It's an opportunity to give yourself permission to like take it step by step and just trust the process. Um, And I just think that therapy is such an enriching experience, like if you let it be, because healing isn't easy. Journeys into wellness is not an easy process. And so, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not
Mhm.
easy at all. It's challenging, but that's why we're here. We want to help. Yeah.
Absolutely. And a takeaway for our listeners, I think this week, take a minute and kind of journal about like what you would like to explore in therapy, if therapy is like the direction that you want to go in. And, it could be a specific goal, or it could be about like improving your relationships. It could be about working through certain feelings about something. It could be something about your career. But to kind of just take a mindful moment and write down things that you would want to get out of your therapy experience. And as you're going through, figuring out which therapist is best for you, kind of referring to that as kind of like your guidepost. Um, yeah.
Definitely. Definitely.
Cool.
Well, thank you all for tuning in with Healing Works with Anna. And thank you, Delane, for asking questions that I know are questions that folks in our audience have. So, yes, at Healing Works, we want to help you on this journey. So feel free to head over to our website if you are ready to begin that journey at healingworks.co. And we'd love to help you on it. And thank you for tuning into to our show. So until next time,
See you next
be
time.
well.
Bye.
When you